So I should probably do an intro. Probably want to do an intro. Hello and welcome back to Outside Notes. This is the show where we break down, in this case, Ikoria Limited. We're going to get into the depth. If you've been out of the loop for a little bit, don't worry. I'll get you right back in the loop and get you up to date on what's going on in Ikoria Limited. Before we get into the actual details of Ikoria, I gotta mention the big hitter that hit at the same time, which is human drafts on Arena are here. We finally have human drafts on Arena. And this was such a big deal, right? Let's just look at how this went down when it was first announced.
Ikoria build, we are bringing full 8-player drafting to Arena. Yeah. This is something that we know players have wanted for a long time,
yes.
We've wanted for a long time, and it's finally here.
They had announced that it was going to come a little bit later down this year, but when we got it now for Ikoria, everybody freaked out. I know human drafts on Arena, that kind of sums up how everybody felt about it. Even for the grumpier among us. I'm sorry, Chris, but look, first time at Mythic at Limited on Arena, human drafts have won me over. Everybody loved it. People have been wanting human drafts on Arena for a long time, and we finally got it for Ikoria, so it is time for us Limited players to rejoice. Many of the people that were most affected were us hardcore Limited players who really wanted this functionality on Arena, but also streamers, like people that stream all the time. And so I thought I'd bring in my friend and the person I started Limited Resources with all those many years ago, Ryan Spain, to give us his impressions. Ryan, there he is.
Hey.
Hello, sir.
Gotcha.
So look, we finally got human drafts on Arena. What was your first impression when you saw that?
My first impression was, wow, well played Wizards on the timing. They kind of teased us kind of like end of year and suddenly, bam, there it is. So great. Thank you. Love it. I know I've been asking for it. I've been asking a lot for it. It's been changing my stream and changing my Magic enjoyment.
So why is it, I want you to go in depth for us for a minute here. Maybe if somebody is newer to Arena and they've been drafting for a while against bots, and they're going, well, this is fine. Why is it so important to get human drafts on Arena?
The introduction of a self-correcting meta is the most important thing about it. I mean, everybody's making the same joke right now of how bad the bots are on Arena, and they're not drafting against bots,
yeah.
Right? So I think people are learning that like maybe the bots are okay at like picking powerful cards, but they're not diverse enough in their implementation about their behavior such that it was a little off-putting to purists who really want the true draft experience. And now, like if some archetype is starting to take over and everybody, the new boogeyman of the format is this, draft is self-correcting with humans. We can all start to chase after that a little harder. If 3 people start drafting the best archetype in the format at the same table, it weakens that archetype in its execution. And so that's what I mean by self-correcting meta. I really did long for that human draft experience. And now I'm just over the moon to have the experience I already preferred, but with self-correcting draft metas, 100% of cards being drafted, being put into players' hands to actually play in the queues, and all the value propositions are all very reasonable as well.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thanks for popping in. You probably got to get back to your stream over at Going Optimal. We'll see you over there.
Thanks.
So Ryan basically said what everybody else is thinking too, which is that this is just all awesome. So now we have the human drafts on Arena, but we also got the same at the same set we got at the same time we got a brand new set, which is, of course, Ikoria. So the first thing to do is to look at the mechanics, right? That's where you want to go. And if you go and look at the mechanics article on Wizards, it's done by Matt Tabak. This thing's always awesome, really informative. And they even do videos for like the big headliner mechanics. But here's what I want to focus on. Poor little cycling. Now, it got the first spot in the article. Good job, cycling. But it did not get a video. It's just like, it's cycling. You know what it does, right? Well, it turns out that in Ikoria, cycling is really important. In fact, it might be the best archetype that you can draft, full stop. And we're going to talk about that today to get into it. And I'll show you a little evidence here. Here's Luis. I've been cycling through drafts rapidly with great success. Here's a draft guide that advocates 14 lands. A ton of uncastables, right? Cards that can't even be cast in the deck at all. and all of a sudden you're playing this busted consistent deck. You start looking around and kind of everybody's playing these decks now. I think the red-white deck needed to be 13 lands in a limited deck. So the first thing you need to know is that this deck is capable of incredible things. So let's watch Kenji do something really stupid.
1 mana, deal 2 the opponent, draw a card. 1 mana, deal 2 the opponent, draw a card. 1 mana, deal 2 to the opponent, draw a card. 1 mana, deal 2 to the opponent, draw a card. 1 mana, deal 2 to the opponent, draw a card.
This is just completely absurd.
2 mana, deal 1 to the opponent, draw a card. Or deal 2 to the opponent, draw a card, rather.
Then he draws Zenith Flare. Discards it.
I discarded the flare, chat. How does that make you feel?
I figured the best way to find out more about the deck was to ask the man himself. So let's just get Kenji in here and we'll talk to him about the cycling deck.
Hello. I haven't shaved, but hopefully that's not a problem.
No, you look beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. We just watched a clip of you cycle
Oh, yeah. I know what you're
6
talking
times.
About. Yeah. Magic just posted that the other day.
Right. So I want to know, look, so topic of conversation, the cycling deck in Ikoria. Is it, or it is the best deck in the format, right? Like as a baseline?
I think so. If open. What I like about it is that you actually just get to run so many free cards in a sense, and you get to shave on lands because you have all of these cards that have cycling on them. The majority of my red-white cycling deck have been running anywhere between 13 and 15 lands just because... yeah, well, just because you get to... like, it's okay to keep a one-lander when you have 3 cards that cycle for 1 mana because the odds are you're going to draw a land within the first 3 or 4 draw steps.
Yeah.
You know? And so you just get to maximize the number of cycling cards in your deck, which power up cards like Zenith Flare, right? And that's the number 1 payoff card. Just the fact that it's so consistent because of that. Just everything seems to work together so nicely, and yeah, I think that's the selling point for me.
What about the difference between a card that costs 1 mana to cycle and 2?
The difference between 1 and 2 mana in this deck, or in the cycling deck, is tremendous. When you combine it with cards like Prickly Marmoset or the Thundermane, it's just you have so many uses for this extra mana that paying 2 to draw a card is, I mean, it is double 1, of course, but it often feels like it is so much more. Oftentimes you're taking 1 mana cyclers that aren't on color, so to speak, because they are always just going to be better than anything that costs 2 to cycle.
It's incredible to think that we could jump into the format and we're playing 13, 14 land decks and playing cards in our deck that we could never cast. Right? You could just like completely uncastable.
Yeah, so predominantly you're going to be in red, white, and /blue. Normally, I go red, white when I'm going cycling, but oftentimes, even though I only have mountains and plains in my deck, maybe you only have like 10 or 15 actual red-white cards, and you have 10 off-color cards, that you can basically never cast.
What are some of the commons that people should pay attention to if they want to take a shot at drafting this deck as far as the payoffs go?
Right. I think number 1 is the Prickly Marmoset. I think that might just be top 2 or 3 red common in the set period. It's the 2/3 first strike for a red and 2. And then whenever you cycle a card, it gets +2/+0. You can just never block it in combat because, oh my god, well, if my opponent has 1 cycling card, they're going to kill my 4/4. If they have 2 cycling, I can't double block it. If they have 2 cycling cards, they're going to kill both my 3/3s.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the highest priority common.
It's funny with the Prickly Marmoset because whenever you attack with it, they never block, and if you ever leave mana up and just pass, they never attack.
Oh yeah, it does everything. Plus, it's very easy to get. There's a card called Raking Claws. It gives a creature double strike, and it has cycling itself. So it's just very, very good in conjunction with the Prickly Marmoset. You can either just cycle it, get a card, add 2 damage, or you can cycle a few cards prior and then Raking Claws and, deal.
One-shot them, yeah.
Yeah, one-shots. Another one is the Drannit Stinger. This one goes a lot earlier in the draft, so I think Drannit Stingers probably are a little bit higher of a pick, even though I don't think it's necessarily as good of a payoff. This is the red and 1 for a 2/2 whenever you cycle a card. It deals 1 damage to each opponent, and then it has cycling 1 itself.
I can't believe it has cycling.
Yeah, it's the perfect 2-drop, right?
Yeah.
It does everything. It
is.
cycles for 1 when you don't need it, and then if you have the luxury of playing it on turn 2, it can just deal 5, 6, 7 points of damage depending on how many cycling cards you have. So the Zenith Flare in this deck is the bomb, of course. It just not only does it buy you so much time, but it also can just one-shot the opponents, and because it's multicolored and specifies cycling, this is really the only deck that it fits into. Similarly, I've had really good success with the card called Reptilian Reflection. That's the red and 2 enchantment that whenever you cycle a card, you can turn Reptilian Reflection into a 5/4 trample haste.
Yes.
And so a very common sequence a lot of the time if you're in the cycling deck is you go turn 3 Prickly Marmoset, turn 4 Reptilian Reflection, cycle for 1 mana, and then all of a sudden you're attacking for 9 with a 4/3 first strike and a 5/4 trample haste. And it's just like, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, good luck opponent. Does it have a bad matchup?
Yeah, I think early pressure is one of the best ways to deal with it, because a lot of the times the cycling deck, it doesn't run as many removal spells necessarily. I mean, obviously it'll take its Fire Prophecies, Passivisms if it gets them, but those cards don't have cycling themselves. I mean, the Fire Prophecy has like pseudo cycling, but they're not necessarily on point with what the deck's trying to do. And so if you can get on the board early and then just back it up with some removal spells, because oftentimes if I'm running the cycling deck and I don't have the Zenith Flare, like the huge Getcha card, if the opponent just removes my first 2 creatures, well, then you're stuck in hand with a bunch of cycling cards that probably don't do anything, trying to find something, and you're just getting beaten down by a 2/2 a lot of the time. So you just got to have the early interaction versus the cycling deck, and then hope that they don't have the flare.
Okay, so a good combination of pressure plus spot removal for the first few threats could get you to a win there.
Sometimes the cycling deck, it doesn't really have that many creatures beyond the Marmosets, maybe the Stinger if they're lucky. And so if you're just able to deal with even one of them, that often buys you enough time to where the cycling deck just goes, okay, well, now I need to find something else again, so I'm going to take 2 turns to cycle 5 cards.
I just wondered, I mean, you play so much. Did anything else cool happen that stands out?
I did finally get to Uber mutate on top of a Crystalline Giant that had gotten hexproof. And that's, let me tell you, that feels very, very good. The best part about Arena is that the more you mutate, the more crystals that show up on the card visually. I've mutated 6 times on one creature, and it just has a bunch of crystals. Like, you cast another mutate on it, and then suddenly 10 triggers go on the stack. Your opponent doesn't even know what's going on. So another one. Similar with mutate is I had double of the Insatiable Hemophage. I think it's called Insatiable Hemophage, the Drain mutator.
Yeah.
And so I played one, I mutated another Hemophage on that Hemophage, and then over the course of the next 2 turns, I mutated 3 more times on it, or like twice more or something, and it just drained the opponent for 20.
All right, man. Well, that's great. I'll let you go back to your strict draft schedule. But thanks for hanging out, Kenji. It's always good to see you.
Absolutely.
So you got to hear what Kenji has to say about the format, and we got to go a little bit in depth to give you an idea of what the shell is for this red-white based, although it can have blue in it too, cycling deck. But to kind of meld our 2 topics together today, the fact that it's good week 1 doesn't necessarily mean that it'll stay that way forever because of the self-correcting nature of draft, and that's just one of the beautiful things about booster draft, and we'll all get to figure out together where it goes from here if cycling can stand the test of time. Before I leave you though, I have a couple of absurd clips again just to show you some of the stuff that can happen, because when the set first came out, we got a chance to see the ultimatums. And the ultimatums are these extremely mana cost intensive cards with a really high payoff. Can we actually cast them in limited?
Oh, speaking of beautiful magic cards, should you splash the ultimatum, Ben? Will you be able to cast it? First game, round 1. First game I've played with the deck. Boom! Let's go.
And there you go, right? I mean, come on. That is awesome. Like, he's splashed for an ultimatum. How is that? Like, this is a format that has a lot of mana fixing available to it, and you should be aware of that at all times, because your opponent could have anything. And when you're drafting, especially if you happen to be in green, the world is open to you. You can do a lot. And just to finish off, I'll show you one other let's say an inspiring ultimatum story here from our friend Christian Calcano.
Target player gains 5, that's me. Target creature, that's you. And I draw 5. And inspired ultimatum number 2. Nice.
He just cast inspired ultimatum, and then off of his draw drew another inspired ultimatum. Goals: be like Kenji, cycle off. Be like Ben, splash for an ultimatum. Be like Calculator, draw an ultimatum off another ultimatum. Obviously, this format goes deep, and there's a lot to see here. That's going to do it for this week on Outside Notes. Next week, we'll go even deeper into the format. We'll see you then. Thanks for watching this week's episode of Outside Notes, and please subscribe to our YouTube channels for next week's episode, as well as other sweet content coming up soon.